my family's Canadian. Pretty much all of my family lives in Canada except for my parents and like my brothers. Basically.
Okay.
I decided to like call a few people.
Okay, that's what I was hoping. Yeah, I wanted to.
So just to get like a general vibe on what's going on, because I think you've talked about this quite a bit, and this is like I think a somewhat well understood topic, is like Canada's kind of also in a bit of an economic crisis in general right now.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah,
like the dollar.
People are struggling.
Like I remember growing up, there was a period of time. My dad got paid in Canadian dollars because he worked out of Canada, even though we lived in the U.S. So there was a time when the Canadian dollar was like worth more than the U.S. dollar growing up.
That's
like
crazy.
for like a year, and then basically on par for a long time. But now it's like, I think
Way
it's like
less.
70 cents
Oof.
to the dollar.
I made a video game with a Canadian developer, and so we got paid. We got our pay on Steam, and he's like, "I need to pay you now because every day it sits here, you're losing money as the Canadian dollar devalues."
It is so bad.
It's like it was like losing big percentages of what we got paid.
And I think the real estate crisis there is pretty out of control. Like housing is in the biggest cities in Canada is even more relatively unaffordable than it is in like the biggest U.S. cities. And there's all these like economic issues in Canada that, from loosely talking to my friends prior to this, that they're grappling with. Like they're worried about their prospects of a future, and especially if they like went to college and like have a specialized profession they're supposed to go into. Working in Canada kind of sucks because if you could get a job in the U.S., you could get paid way more.
Yeah. One of the things I didn't know about until recently is the fact that there's the trade agreement where basically if you're a professional in certain categories, but in most like good categories, and then you get a job offer from the US, you just get to come here. Like you don't have to like get a visa. If you get a US job offer, this is part of what was previously NAFTA. And so if you're a Canadian professional and you're like an accountant or a software engineer and you get a job from an American company, you just go to the border. You don't even have to pre-plan this. And you're like, I'm here. Here's the job offer. Here's all the stuff.
Dang.
You just get let in.
I didn't know this until really recently.
And so it's a
like
huge brain drain, like because it's that easy. And it's just like, oh, if Google in the US is going to pay you 3 times as much relative, you can just go, which is wild. So like 10,000 people do that
is trying
a year.
to deal with this too, apparently, because so I read this article that I pulled up, and this was focusing on Canadian to U.S. Immigration in 2022, and from the previous year, it had more than doubled the amount of Canadians leaving Canada to go to the U.S. in that year, and it seems to be an interesting like split among like age groups and like why people are going. There's a quote from an immigration lawyer in that article where he talks about most of the inquiries he's getting now are from young people that are like looking to move for financial
desperate
reasons.
to get out.
I actually tried to call the lawyer today and like ask him about like what it's like right now. And they didn't get back to me, but I called my my one other relative that lives in the US is my cousin, and she works in biotech, and she moved to San Diego with her also Canadian boyfriend a few years ago. And I was letting her kind of break it down for me. And she's like, at the end of the day, like it just came to like money and like my profession. And she says like all the people in her field and like who studied with her in Canada also want to move to the US because she gets 3x her pay down here.
Yeah.
And she pays like a comparable amount in taxes. So like financially, it makes sense. And then even if she wants to go back to Canada, and I think a lot of people in her situation, it sounds like they would want to go back to Canada
Like
one day,
eventually for
they can
family or
save
whatever.
money faster to buy a home in Canada when they go back. And so that's like her experience as someone who's already made the move, right?
Speaking of homes, can I show this?
Are you going to show my actual home and my address?
Yeah, I'm going to show your home and address and your dad and where he lives. And
You can draw on it.
this is
Here at Lemonade Stand.
I remember this, yeah.
oh sure.
Yeah. Here at Lemonade Stand, we have fancy telestrator technology
on it,
to
Aiden.
really make it a worse experience for the audio listeners.
I just think
you're
if people
see-
don't
you're
know
gonna look
about
right
Canada,
here.
like if
You're gonna look right here. That's actually Atrioc's real home.
Yeah, I commute from Toronto.
That's
I got a $2.5 million shack in Toronto.
fun
but
fact. Ari is not allowed to leave the house between 9 and 5.
that's for religious reasons. But anyway, Canada's real estate market, if you don't know, is like one of the worst in the world. Basically, every major city, the prices have gotten astronomical. They had no 2008, 2009 housing boom. Like they had it, but they didn't pop it the way we had it here. So it just kept growing.
Weird.
And it's continued to grow. And at this point, like any Canadian you talk to talks about how they'll just never own a home. like, essentially at their
Yeah,
wages.
they've like given up.
They've
at
given
that
up
prospect.
completely. Yeah.
So this is the interesting thing to me is like I was reading this article and I was like, this makes sense. Like the thing that my parents tell me all the time is like the reason we moved to the U.S. or the reason we wanted to be in the U.S. was it afforded me like job and like economic opportunity that we wouldn't have had in Canada.
She knew
and
you'd make dick jokes on a podcast one
exactly.
day.
And I said, Mom, you're right. I never could have made it doing this work in Vancouver. But I think that shared story is very similar between all the people I talked to. It's like, it basically like they had some sort of specialized job, like especially like software engineers as an example that I can think of.
In the tech industry, when I was still in the tech industry, so many Canadian software engineers, like so many companies in Silicon Valley have a Canadian branch, like really smart people. And then again, now with these new rules, they've been here for a while, but like those people can just come to the US now and just make way more.
Right.
Yeah.
And it seems like the financial aspect of it is the key mover on that over kind of everything else. Because I ended up talking to another close friend of mine that still lives. He lives in Alberta. He lives in Calgary, and he's trying to get a job in like finance right now. And I was like, what is like for you, who's in Canada trying to find a job in Canada? How do things feel to you right now? And he's like, well, things are pretty like doomer here in terms of like economic, like owning a home, like the job market's really bad. It's tough to find work if you're a young person, even like if you're a new college grad.
Right.
And these things are all like shared frustrations among my friends.